An officer was shot down, taken to hospital. 2 suspects were taken down. And the area is cordoned off right now.
On Sunday, we brought you news of the attempted terrorist attack on a free speech art exhibit in Garland, Texas, just outside of Dallas. Our friend David Menzies was down there, being hosted by Pamela Geller. And Pamela joins us now from New York. Pamela, great to see you, and thank goodness you're safe and David was safe, and the only 2 who wound up dead were the terrorists themselves.
Yes, I mean, what's interesting is it was an event that had protection because we have been dealing with this for well over a decade. All of my events require this kind of protection, and so we were prepared. What escapes the media, who is blaming me, what escapes the media is that these 2 jihadists traveled 1,000 miles. There were weapons in their car, as you know. Their plan, which was very well coordinated, they attacked at 7 o'clock p.m. when the event was over and people were funneling out of the sort of cavernous ballroom and into the foyer where it was a lot of humanity in one space, and they intended to open fire. And we had our own security team and the superb Garland Police Department, and they were taken down. But my point in all of this is that these 2 jihadists, does anyone really believe that they were going to go off and lead peaceful lives if this conference didn't take place?
Yeah.
What would have been attacked without the proper protection? Yeah. Would it have been a coffee shop, Ezra, in Australia, like they did? Would it have been like the kosher supermarket? Lives were saved with this conference. These jihadists traveled 1,000 miles.
Yeah.
And the media's obsession with taking out counter-jihad voices and voices of freedom is deadly. It is deadly.
Yeah. It's incredible to me that literally the next day after you were the target of a well-coordinated, well-armed terrorist attack that, thank God, was foiled, you were on CNN, and they, instead of asking you about the terrorism, about how it frankly proves your thesis that radical Islam will not be satisfied until everyone submits to Sharia law, you, the victim, were grilled. Here, let's take a quick look at that.
Did you get any intel from the police about just how dangerous an event like this could be? Of course, everyone's concerned about the violence, but let's face it, your event wasn't just about the violence. It was about...
My event was about freedom of speech, period. And the fact that we have to spend upwards of $50,000 in security speaks to how dangerous and how in trouble freedom of speech is in this country. And then we have to get on these news shows, and somehow we are, those that are targeted, those that were going to be slaughtered, are the ones who get attacked, speaks to how morally inverted this conversation is.
Pamela, I have never heard of another victim or attempt or would-be victim of a criminal attack, let alone a terrorist attack, being grilled. The Washington Post had a headline that you wouldn't apologize. I've just never seen the insinuation that things are flipped on their head, that you caused this. Will you apologize? Asked the Washington Post. How dare you be so provocative? Asked the CNN. What's going on here? Why are people who normally should be the defenders of free speech, Pamela, why are they damning you for exercising yours?
Because I'm violating the Sharia, and they've been enforcing the Sharia for a long time. The headlines, the New York Times, the Washington Post, my incendiary conference. You know what's incendiary? I'll tell you what's incendiary. The Jordanian pilot that was set on fire by the Islamic State, that's incendiary. My conference is very controversial. It's very controversial. Shooting cartoonists is controversial. Mm-hmm. The idea that, I didn't make Drawing Mohammed a flashpoint. They made it a flashpoint. Mm-hmm. And this is a fundamental free speech issue. Mm-hmm. And it really speaks to the problem. I mean, the terrorist attack itself was horrible, but the fact is, it exposes the media, because let me tell you something, I cannot keep up with the, now at this point, tens of thousands of emails that I've been receiving in support. Everything that I'm seeing on the street, in my email box, on the phone, I mean everywhere, there's a dichotomy between the media elite, completely out of touch, and the American people. This terrible incident demonstrates why these free speech conferences are so necessary.
You know, there's some obvious ways of thinking about this. Swap out the word Mohammed and swap in the word Jesus, Buddha, whoever. You know, if we're talking about artwork, think of The Life of Brian, the Monty Python movie that mocks Christianity. Heck, anything Woody Allen done that makes fun of himself as a Jew. I mean, Scientology is mocked every night on late night comedy shows. None of the critics who say, you shut up, your skirt was too short, you were asking for it, that kind of blame the victim rhetoric. If we were talking about someone trying to ban the Broadway play, the Book of Mormon, or to ban a film like South Park, poking fun at Scientology, all of these liberal media elites would claim they stand for free speech. Pamela, what is it about the one religion of Islam that turns otherwise free speechniks into people who would probably, I mean, it seemed to me that they would join in a stoning of you if they could. I mean, they actually seem to hate you in a way, not just be against you or say that was a bad idea. There was a hatred I sensed for you.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it seems. I think you could make that statement quite plainly. They absolutely do. So there's something else at work here. I don't know what it is, but making it about me takes the glare off of the jihadists. Making it about me is we don't have to speak to the ideology behind this terrorist attack. Making it about me, questions that need to be asked about the mosque they went to. The imam was allegedly shocked because they were peaceful. Well, if they were peaceful, are we just going to take his word for it? That the mosque wasn't teaching it? That mosque should be investigated? And if the mosque wasn't teaching it, we need to ask the question why, when these young Muslims became devout, that they found the ISIS doctrine more alluring than the peaceful teachings that were allegedly being given at this mosque. These questions are not being asked at all. There's no conversation about this. We get the standard, we condemn terrorist attacks, but always the but.
Yeah, always the but. Everything before the word but, I've learned to ignore. It's what they say after the word but that counts. Now, I recall when I published the Danish cartoons of Mohammed in a magazine, the Western Standard, 9 years ago now, I was shocked by the anger towards me by other journalists, and I ascribed it to the fact that they were embarrassed by the fact that I was being a free journalist, uncensored, and they were either being censored by their own companies or being personally cowardly. So I have come to the conclusion that some of the anger about me back then and some of the anger about you today is other journalists who wish they had the courage to live up to those noble journalistic ideals are upset that you're showing them up, that you yourself are hosting this free speech art exhibit that the New York Times ought to have done, but hasn't. Look, we're almost out of time, Pamela, but I got one more question for you. And I don't want you to answer it if it'll put you in jeopardy. But I know that one of the speakers at your event was Geert Wilders, the Dutch politician who, when he travels, has at least a half a dozen armed guards. I tell you, I've never seen anyone with more armed guards other than our Canadian Prime Minister. Geert Wilders is obviously the subject of constant assassination attempts. Salman Rushdie had to have 24-hour guards as well. Can you tell me, without compromising your own situation, are you under increased threat because of the fact that you were attempted and they missed at you? Are you worried that they're going to take another crack at you?
Well, ISIS issued a declaration, a fatwa on me late last night, declaring that I must be killed, and anyone close to me that tries to protect me must be killed. Any venue that will host any event of mine will be targeted. It was a far-reaching, and they call me the Khanzar, which of course is pig, and what Muhammad called the Jews before he slaughtered them. And we're supposed to believe this has nothing to do with Muhammad, and we're not allowed to draw Muhammad, but they can invoke him on their, wholesale slaughter campaign. So of course I've stepped up security. I am hoping, and I'm going to press the FBI, being that this is a terrorist threat, that they're going to have to provide additional layers. NYPD is always, they're the finest. I know you're in Canada. You got your Mounties up there. They red little coats, very fashionable. But the NYPD is spectacular. Of course, I'm concerned. Look, they would love to take out one of us because there are so few that are willing to speak. But I tell you, in reading my emails, Ezra, so many Americans are shocked by this, and then the aftershock of the media coverage. Americans are stunned by the media coverage. They really are. This is a terrorist attack. They wanted to slaughter hundreds, or at least scores, of Americans going to a freedom of speech conference. Look, you know, they made Mohammed the flashpoint. If I sit down with a pen on a little napkin and draw a drawing and I write Mohammed on top of it, that warrants a death sentence. And for people that say that I'm being provocative, I think slaughter for free speech is provocative. It's nonsense. This is the enforcing of the Sharia. We are enforcing the Sharia, and if you give into this, you will have to give into it every single time. It will be impossible to revoke. It's the line in the sand. It's the line in the sand. It's now. And we're importing, whole Muslim communities from jihad nations under the refugee resettlement program. You don't know how many could be activated by the Islamic State. I know it was only a lone wolf. There's no such thing. They're all jihadists. They're all mujahideen in the global jihad army. And until law enforcement and our political elites can get their arms around this, and that means understanding the jihadic doctrine, then we have no shot. And that's why what you do, Ezra, is so important, because they are disarming freedom-loving peoples. And that's why we do what we do, to educate them.
Thank you so much for joining us today, Pamela Geller. Stay safe, my friend.
Thank you.
Thank you.